Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is Wise Thrice and this is a Druid's Rune Ramble, and I've decided to record some quick thoughts about the Christian holiday of Halloween and how to survive it. Yes, you heard me correctly. Halloween is not a pagan holiday, it is a Christian holiday. Halloween and Samhain are two different things, and as you're going to experience Halloween in the dominant culture, it is important to understand this difference. Samhain is the New Year in Celtic traditions, and it does have some frivolity to it, but it doesn't change the fact that it is a solemn holiday. Every Samhain rite I've ever been to has got some solemnity to it, and then the celebration starts after the rite is over. Halloween is the exact opposite. So, that being in mind, let me give you some quick survival rules for this holiday. I know at first it doesn't seem like Druids, pagans, and heathens would need this kind of a guide, but the dominant culture doesn't understand our traditions or what they mean to us, so you can find yourself in some unique situations. First, if at all possible, go to Halloween parties, especially those that do not conflict with your own observance. Your friends do not understand what the holiday means to you because they're most likely non-pagans. Refusing to go to their holiday out of some sense of religious purity is only going to make them feel alienated and make them feel like that you don't like them. If at all possible, go. If you are being invited to a mandatory function, as work will sometimes do, and it happens to conflict with when you celebrate Samhain, you need to consider moving Samhain. I realize there are people who have problems with that concept, but I came to some peace a long time ago that the dominant culture does not respect mystical timing or moon phases, and that if we're going to live in it, we need to be flexible. After all, a druid with no paycheck doesn't make for very good company. Second, when you get trick-or-treaters at your door, be sure that you are nice. Do not try to do any kind of education about the actual holiday. Realize that most of the parents that have children celebrating Halloween do not care for their children having to try to think during the holiday. The holiday is presented here mostly as a kind of carnival. It's an excuse for people to get out of the normal world. And so parents want their kids to just go get their candy, have fun with their friends, and have some memories. And if you get in the way of that, frankly, you're a dick. There are plenty of enough people, particularly fundamentalist evangelical Christians, that are already slipping pamphlets into Halloween baskets telling children not to enjoy their childhood. Don't add to it from the other side of the scales. Third, I realize that you're going to have people show up at your doorstep with children that are dressed inappropriately. I agree. A 7-year-old girl does not need to be wearing a sexy witch costume, and any teenage daughter that is let out of the house wearing less clothes than a hentai anime character has not got good parents. But they aren't your children. When in doubt, repeat this old Finnish proverb, not my circus, not my monkeys. If the parent is willing to let the child walk out of the house like this, you really don't have a right to tell them, with the child present, that this might be bad. If you know them, talk to them privately later. Okay, all that being said, let us get to the fourth little survival guide thing I have here. Dealing with evangelical fundamentalist Christians. You're going to get them during the holiday, particularly if you're out of the broom closet. You might end up with people on your doorstep trying to convince you to repent from your sinful ways. You might have people trying to hold prayer circles on your front lawn. Every Halloween I see here in the local area, there is some prayer circle somewhere on a street corner praying for the souls of mankind, trying to lift the darkness from the world. Do not try to educate these people that they are protesting their own Christian holiday. Halloween is a holiday started by Christians, a contraction of the word All Hallows Eve. And if you look at the Wikipedia article, it will trace in a very actually informative manner the history of the holiday and how up until about the 15th or 16th century, this was a major part of Christianity. There are some scholars that say that Christians basically gleaned Celtic harvest festivals for this, but there are many scholars that say, no, this kind of developed independently on its own. The holiday originally is called that because it's a commemoration not only of all the people who have died that year, but of all the saints and martyrs that have died for the Christian faith. And it is a head event for a long period of time where that's supposed to be the theme of the Christian holy calendar, at least as we're talking about traditional Catholicism. So when Christians show up and they're protesting Halloween, and they're claiming that it's dark, and they're claiming that it's evil, and they're claiming that it's pagan, just kind of say, Wikipedia, look it up, and let the discussion go. If they're not willing to read a Wikipedia article, nothing you say is going to convince them otherwise, particularly in regards to Samhain. The Samhain rite I have most seen practiced amongst my fellow Druids is actually pretty simple. It dates back to what was done in Ireland, where 2 major bonfires are lit, and the cattle walked between the fires to bless them and keep them from being afflicted by any evils for the coming year. It is a holiday that marks the end of one year, the start of the other. It does have some harvest roots to it, and in certain parts of Ireland there is a belief that this is the time of year where you basically bribe the fairies to leave your cattle alone. Every modern Druid circle I've been to so far has also made this an ancestor holiday, where you spend the time thinking about all the people in your bloodline who have died. It is believed generally that this is the time of year where they are closer to you. Some people have a different take on what that closer means. Some people think the spirit world is closer this time. Some people think it's just that your mind is more focused on it. Some people believe there's actually communication that can happen between the living and the spirit world at that time. Whatever you believe, the common kernel is that this is a holiday of reflection. It is solemn. And so I advise you, if you're having a Samhain ceremony, it is probably not the ceremony to introduce any non-pagan to Druidry, pagan, Wicca, or whatever, because there's going to be old feelings that come up for people. I remember one Samhain ceremony I was at, one of the participants had just had a father die, and it was a father they had lots of issues with, and they basically had a breakdown. That is not the kind of thing you want a non-pagan seeing right off the bat. That's going to convince them there's something wrong or evil with what you're doing. They don't understand the deep psychological healing that's going on. The being allowed to grieve, the being allowed to let go of all the abuse that you suffered. It's probably not the holiday, as I said, to start them off when. If you're going to invite a non-pagan to a Samhain ceremony, probably the best thing to do is spend about a week prepping them for what they're likely to see and explain to them how important this is to you and your group of friends. If at all possible this holiday season, spend the time around other pagans, druids, heathens, Wiccans, whatnot, because, well, there's going to be some people that just don't understand it or outright attack it, and it's good to have friends at those times. That is about everything I put in my notes. Other than, whatever you do, follow the cardinal law of geekdom, I guess you could call it. It's actually, I think, jokingly called Whedon's first rule: don't be a dick. Just, do what you do, and if somebody gets in your face about what you're doing, dismiss them as politely as you can. This is Wise Thrice wishing you health, wealth, and peace, and living the heroic life until the next time I see you. Please stay tuned, as my next Druid Runes legend is about the legend. That brings me up to another survival thing now that I think about it. It's very common this time of year for people to have horror movie fests and to invite you. It's very common for misunderstandings about what it is pagans do this time of year to come up. If you find yourself in that situation where someone really is seeking information, they really are concerned that you are out in the woods doing blood work or something, bring up to them that Hollywood has pretty much stolen this holiday from us and made it into their own thing, just like they've done to certain other aspects of Christianity. For instance, the Exorcist movie got a lot of things wrong about how Catholics see exorcism. Another popular movie out there that involves Wicca, The Craft, got many things wrong with how covens actually operate, and basically tapped into a bunch of teenage angst and made it official Wicca. And I'm sure there's more than one Wiccan that was rolling their eyes at the time. A good example of how Hollywood can pervert a tradition is the movie The Skeleton Key. There was a very prominent voodoo practitioner that was the consultant for the movie, and from the get-go, I think it was Catherine Yarnwood, now I think about it, but I'm not sure. She says from the get-go that the writer and the director already had made up their minds what they wanted. They just wanted something to make it feel more southern, so it'd be more convincing. And they had no interest in talking to her about what the tradition actually entailed. They wanted something that looked good on camera, and they basically toned her out most of the time. And if I recall the interview correctly, she also resolved that she would never work as a consultant again for Hollywood. Realize that most people that are non-pagans have Hollywood programming, and you're going to have to correct it. If you find yourself in that situation, lay out to them and be honest what it is that you do. And then if they want to see it, go through the aforementioned bring non-pagans to Samhain thing, I recommend it. Okay, and in that vein, trying to correct some of that Hollywood programming, it is very common this time of year for horror movies to have disastrous endings and things to be negative, 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 and undeath and all that kind of stuff. To correct that, this year I'm going to record my take on an old Scottish ballad that takes place during this time of year. And it's called The Tale of Young Tam Lin. And it's an old ballad that dates all the way back to the 1500s. I think like 1557 was the first time it appears in print. And it tells the story of someone that got abducted by the fairies and what has to happen to get him free. And it's very unique in that it has a happy ending. And so I feel like that's the kind of stories that we as pagans need to tell more. So I'm going to be making a Druid's Rune legend about young Tam Lin, and I do hope you tune into it. Until the next time I see you, health, wealth, and peace, and live the heroic life.